Hello and welcome to day 5763 of lockdown. Yep, we're still stuck inside, at least here in India. And we're going crazy. Clearly, we've ordered way too much coffee. But we're excited. We're excited to have you back because we're going to talk about how to choose the right coffee for you. And the thing that's really nice is we're spoiled for choice. But that can also be an overwhelming thing for people who are new to this. And so we're going to break it down to a few simple steps that will allow you to have all of the information that you need to go and pick the right bag of coffee for you. So let's get started. So the first thing that you're going to want to know is how you plan to brew this coffee. And that brings me to equipment. So as you can see, there are a lot of brewers, and the fun part is actually trying all of them out and seeing which one you like the most. The V60 for us is a daily driver. It brews a very clean, nuanced cup of coffee, which we love. But we obviously use all of these others too. And we also have like a manual espresso machine now, which we love. So that's one aspect of equipment, the brewer. The other one is the grinder. Now, do you have a grinder or not? If you're new to this, you probably don't. And that means you're going to have to look for that aspect on the website, which is grind size. So how do these two aspects of equipment relate to you picking a bag of coffee? Let's talk about roast profile. Now, this should be mentioned on most specialty coffee bags. If not, you can ask your roaster or the barista, and they'll be happy to help you. You're going to see words like light, medium dark, or dark, and these signify the roast levels. And a roaster will decide based on the merit of a bean what profile they want for a certain bean and also what the intended brewer is for that bean. Usually you'd brew like a V60 with medium and lighter roasts. The darker side of medium will be espresso, but this isn't always true. So if you do see these words like medium, light and dark, it's better to ask. Now some roasteries will say filter roast, or they'll say espresso roast. You could even see something called an omni roast. And that makes it very clear what the roast is for, and it doesn't matter whether it's a medium dark or a light roast. And I feel like this is a little more useful for the end customer, because if you see a filter profile, you know that it's good for like a V60 or a Kalita wave. And if you see something like an omni roast, which is becoming more popular now, it's roasted and optimized so that it works well across a range of brewers. So look for those words and then decide on which profile will work for your brewer. Moving on to grind size. We obviously highly recommend a grinder, and we always talk about this. And if you want to read more about it, we've linked to a blog post below. Grind size is very important if you don't have a grinder, because you will need to pick the right grind size for the brewer that you're going to use. For example, a French press uses a fairly coarse grind. A V60 is slightly finer than that, and a mocha pot is even finer than that. If you're using something like the South Indian filter, it could go very fine all the way down to espresso or even Turkish in some cases. So every website, if you're ordering online, will have an option to pick the grind size. So if you have a grinder, pick whole beans. If you don't, then pick the grind size that's right for your brewer. Now that we've got equipment out of the way, let's talk about the other aspect that comes to choosing coffee, which is arguably the most important one, and that's your preference and your taste. You're going to have to brew a bunch of coffee and find what your palate likes. And that process is also a lot of fun. I mean, who doesn't like trying different coffees? So order a bunch of bags of coffee from various roasteries and brew them with your favorite brewer and see which ones you like the most. And then you'll probably start to see a trend. So an easy way to do this is through sample packs, and most roasteries will offer this. It's basically small quantities of a bunch of different coffees that they roast, and that'll allow you to sample a bunch of them and see what you like the most and then order larger bags of those. These here are sample packs from a company called Driftaway. Check them out if you get a chance to. They're pretty amazing. So when you're going through and tasting all of these different coffees, you're going to come across tasting notes on your bag of coffee. And what we can say straight up is don't get too hung up on the specific ones. Like, don't try to taste that upside down pineapple cake with a bit of char on top. because that's just going to lead you down a rabbit hole, and it's going to be frustrating. So the way that we like to use tasting notes is in a broader sense. And how you do that is, if you see 2 or 3 fruits as part of the tasting notes on a bag, then you know what to expect from that coffee would be a sort of a fruity coffee. Similarly, floral notes, or if you see like chocolatey or nutty. So another reason to not get hung up on like the specific tasting notes is palate training. And as you drink more and more coffee, you'll develop your palate and it'll happen naturally. And it's much better to kind of figure out what you're tasting when you brew a cup of coffee, as opposed to someone else telling you what you should taste. There, we've given you a reason to indulge, so go ahead and order a shitload of coffee. And if anyone asks you why, say your palate training. If you want to know more about like the process that we follow to train our palate, we do this series called Coffee Curious that we post on Instagram, so be sure to check out the one on how to train your palate. And the last thing to be factoring in when you're making a decision to buy coffee is your impact as a consumer. And this is very important. I know we joked about being spoiled for choice and having all of these fancy coffees that are available to us. But the industry is under threat due to climate change, social issues, and historically low prices. And so it's becoming increasingly important to buy responsibly. So the way that you can go about doing this is to find roasters and roasteries that are transparent about buying policies and their relationships with farmers. And you can also find the brands that resonate with your values. Some do more for the environment, some do a lot for social causes. So find what aligns with your values and then buy into that brand, because your purchase and your buying decision matters. So there you have it. We hope that gives you enough information to confidently go and buy your next bag of coffee. And those of you in India, here are a few recommendations of coffees that we've tried from various roasters and thoroughly enjoyed. I'll start with Corridor 7's Riverdale, which is excellent for V60 or other pour-over methods. The Gauri Estate by Quick Brown Fox, excellent espresso. Mognad, absolutely delicious for pour-over again. It tastes like ripe mango, and it's super sweet. Blue Tokai's Silver Oak is really good for espresso, and the Marvahula is good for filter. And one more that I can think of off the top of my head would be Black Bazaar, and they make a really interesting Robusta blend called Ficus, which works great for espresso and even the South Indian filter. So this is by no means an exhaustive list, and we're always trying new coffee, so the next time something blows our mind, we'll be sure to update this space. Until then, brew ARAMSE.